a wonderful man. This does not sound good at all, which triggered this Lana, or Supergirl, and there was a brief tussle between the two in the skies before the young woman was able to fly off. And right away, Superman started putting two and two together. So the first thing he did was he went to the Kent farm to check on his parents, where he found his parents as well as the real Lana Lang bound and gagged. And after he released them from their binds, they told him that it was this young woman wearing a variation on Superman's costume that did this to them. And so, after making sure that all three were fine, Superman, who was still piecing things together, flew off, and this time was able to successfully intercept this young woman. And he said, okay, let's go visit Lex Luthor. So, of course, he took her to LexCorp, where this young woman encountered the post-crisis Lex Luthor, who was bald, stout. This time he had his bionic right hand as a result of the kryptonite radiation poisoning from the ring that he wore 24/7. And the young woman said, this isn't Lex Luthor. And Superman said, well, it's not your Lex Luthor. You're not from this Earth. You're from the Pocket Earth. And that was a cue for a transporter signal to lock on and transport both Superman and this pseudo Lana Lang Supergirl to the Pocket Universe, where Supergirl was reunited and Superman first met the Lex Luthor of the Pocket Earth. He was tall, red-haired, handsome, good build, wearing a gold and white battle suit of armor that looked kind of like the gold bodysuit worn by Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 in Crisis on Infinite Earths. All he was missing was that great early 80s longer, frizzy, permed red hair. And this very gentlemanly Lex Luthor introduced himself quite cordially to Superman and explained what had happened on the Pocket Earth since the time of Superboy's death, which in itself came as a shock to Superman. This Lex Luthor explained that following Superboy's death, both Ma and Pa Kent died, ostensibly of broken hearts. That also really rocked Superman. Even though it wasn't his Ma and Pa Kent, he still felt very badly about their deaths. Lex went on to explain that at the funeral for the Kents, young Lex came into town. And of course, because he was coming into a Smallville that was without a Superboy, he would not go down that dark path that would lead him to becoming the evil megalomaniacal green and purple battlesuit wearing Lex Luthor that readers were quite familiar with pre-crisis. Rather, he would remain a benevolent scientist. And young Lex introduced himself to Lana Lang and Pete Ross and explained that he was a scientist and that he theorized that Superboy must have kept a laboratory hidden within the Kent house. And he was hoping to get inside the house so that he could visit this theoretical laboratory, and maybe, just maybe, there might be some technology, some Kryptonian technology even, that Superboy had designed and could be used to help better and protect the Earth in the wake of its greatest hero's demise. And so, with the secret being out, Pete and Lana gave their blessing for this young Lex to go into the Kent house, and lo and behold, he did find that Clark Kent slash Superboy kept a lab hidden in the home. And yes, there were a number of artifacts. And one of the artifacts that really caught Lex's eye looked like a projector. It has a switch on it, and so Lex flipped the switch, and on a view screen appeared a man wearing military-type clothing. And this man introduced himself as General Zod. He explained that he and his two associates were survivors in the survival zone, and he explained that the Phantom Zone, or the survival zone rather, was set up as a sort of a safe haven for people to enter as a way of avoiding the effects of the destruction of Krypton. The idea was that somebody would land on another planet. They would have the projector and they could turn it on, and it would release Zod and his associates, and they could begin life anew on the planet. But sadly, they had been trapped in this Phantom Zone, or survival zone, as Zod corrected himself, for all these years. And now they're looking for somebody to let them out. And young Lex, being somewhat naive, or actually more than a little naive, rationalized it, that 3 Kryptonians in the end could actually do 3 times the work of Superboy. So yes, it would be a good thing if he flipped the switch again and released the survival zoners, which he did. And upon releasing them, Zod and his associates beat young Lex to a pulp and then went on to pillage and plunder Pocket Earth, leaving young Lex Luthor feeling very grief and guilt stricken. And to his credit, Superman comforted Lex and said, there, you couldn't know. Now, it should also be noted at this point in the post-crisis Superman's history, we had yet to see the Phantom Zoners. So these were an unknown quantity even to Superman. So Pocket Lex went on to explain that some time ago he was able to give Lana Lang superpowers, and he created a variation on the Superboy costume, and he wasn't able to completely replicate the Kryptonian powers. He got the flight, the super strength, the speed down, but the vision powers weren't there. However, he was able to give Lana / Supergirl telekinetic powers, and he was also able to give her a chameleon power. She could shapeshift, take on any form. And so the idea was that with this chameleon power, Lana could switch her facial features to those of Supergirl, and she could take on the Phantom Zoners, but still lead her life as Lana Lang. And as Lana Lang, the Phantom Zoners would not target her. And Pocket Lex went on to explain that over time he discovered the existence of this parallel Earth, i.e. the post-crisis Earth, and so he sent Supergirl there to bring Superman over to help defeat the escaped Phantom Zoners, to which of course Superman agreed. And there was another pretty epic battle between Lex Luthor's forces, which now included Superman, and the Phantom Zoners. In the end, Pocket Earth was left a barren wasteland. The Phantom Zoners figured, if we can't have this Earth, nobody can. So they went with the scorched earth policy. They were also able to mortally wound Lex Luthor, and they even beat Supergirl so badly that she ended up turning into basically this Gumby type character, where she was just this purple humanoid glop with no clear features. For his part, Superman was able to take first gold kryptonite, which didn't affect him because this was Pocket Earth, and he was able to depower the Phantom Zoners, and then he played judge, jury, and executioner, and executed all three of the zoners with green kryptonite, figuring that if he left them to rot on Pocket Earth, they would, in time, find a way to get to the mainstream post-crisis Earth and cause terror and chaos there, so Superman couldn't have any of it. Before he managed to return to the post-crisis Earth, Superman did have a talk with Lex Luthor, who was quickly reaching the end. And Luthor explained that the real Lana Lang had been killed years prior, and he had loved her deeply. And so he created Supergirl. She was, in reality, a matrix of protoplasmic material, and he gave her sentience by basically downloading Lana's personality and memory and synaptic pathways into her, so that she really did believe that she was a human being, that she was Lana Lang. But in truth, she was an artificially intelligent matrix. And Luthor asked Superman to take Matrix back to his Earth, where she could be nursed back to health and live some semblance of a happy life. And of course, Superman agreed to that. And so Superman and Matrix, as she was now being called, returned to Earth. Superman took Matrix to the Kent farm, asked his parents to look after her, which they were only too happy to do. They came to see her as a daughter. Of course, they didn't call her Matrix. They called her May for short. Pretty name. And Superman would put himself into a period of self-exile to atone for his execution of the Phantom Zoners. And so that's where the Byrne run ended. So even though it appeared that what he was doing was kind of a spiteful gesture towards DC by bringing back a character who was wearing the S-Shield, this was a Supergirl who was not from Krypton. So really, this ended up working out for DC, because now they could, as a business, bring back a concept which they had profited from in the past, and they could continue to make profits from going forward. But John Byrne was gone, and this was now the time of Roger Stern, Dan Jurgens, Jerry Ordway. Other writers would come on board, and they would, of course, have the post-crisis Supergirl at their disposal. One of the running themes with the post-crisis Supergirl was that her identity was always in question. Was she alive, or was she artificially alive? Did she have a real personality? Did she have a soul? What was her purpose? And Stern and Jurgens and company got on the ball with these questions pretty early on, as May would find herself struggling to maintain her identity while living with the Kents. She became delusional, came to see herself as Clark Kent for a time, and when Superman returned, he had to confront May, and she was able to gain enough of herself back that she realized that she wasn't Clark Kent, but she didn't feel comfortable living on Earth anymore. And so for a time, she was out of the stories. The explanation was that she was somewhere in space trying to find herself. And she would reappear at around the time of Panic in the Sky, the event where Brainiac was causing chaos again, and that required the combined efforts of Superman, Justice League America, as well as Lex Luthor 2, who, as you know from listening to episode 101 of this show, was really the original Lex Luthor, with his brain as consciousness in a cloned younger body. It took the combined efforts of all of those people